Hey there, welcome to saas.unbound podcast. I'm your host, I'm Nadeina, head of growth at SaaS Group. Here we acquire buying wonderful SaaS businesses to take them to the next level. And here I chat with inspiring founders and experts to get an inside scoop on how they made their business success. And today with me is Mikael, founder of Funnelytics, a tool designed for mapping and analyzing marketing funnels. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Anna.
Well, it's great to see you here. I'm super excited to dig a little bit deeper into what you're building. And, I've listened to a couple of podcasts. You always bring, that true life to business and like make people think twice or thrice or, like 10 times before they start a business. So I want to get to that.
Cool.
But let's start with your background.
Okay. I grew up in just outside of Montreal, Canada, and kind of moved a lot as a kid back and forth between Montreal and Toronto, or just kind of the suburbs of Montreal and Toronto. Typical kind of middle class suburban life, playing outside all the time as a kid. I'd go to school, and my parents were, my dad was a banker, so he kind of worked his way up in the banking system. And I went to, like a normal kid, I went to school and then to university, not knowing what I really wanted to do with my life. And, you're supposed to be, 16, 15. And it's like, go figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life and sign up for a 4-year degree. And it's like, I have no idea. I just know I like to play soccer and stuff. So I decided to go and become an engineer. So my dad was an engineer, so I kind of followed in his footsteps. And I did civil engineering, which is basically structures, roads, bridges, that kind of engineering. So nothing to do with software. I didn't know how to code. I still do not know how to code. And at some point throughout that process, I knew I didn't want to be an engineer. I knew probably by year 3, but I wasn't going to stop and start something new. I didn't even know what I wanted to do. And I kind of came across this make money online kind of thing, which what happens when you start going down that rabbit hole. It's like, do you hate your job? Do you want to make $10,000 a month from the beach? And it's like, yes, I do want to make $10,000 a month from the beach. And yes, I do hate my job. So this sounds pretty right. So I kind of ended up going down this rabbit hole of learning all sorts of things, digital marketing. So I started learning about affiliates, Google ads, landing pages, conversions, funnels, email marketing, automations, conversion, psychology and conversion optimization, all these different things. And eventually, I did a whole bunch of stuff. I started a Mandarin school. I sold that, and I started a language business. And eventually, I started my own agency, kind of doing marketing for businesses. And during my agency, one of the things that I kind of kept running into was every business understands a strategy when you turn it into a picture and you visualize it. Like if you put it into words and you say, hey, we need to do some content and we need to do some social media posts and we need to do a podcast. They're like, yeah, but why? Like, how's this going to help me? But then when you actually turn it into a picture and you show them, hey, by creating content, it's going to go over to this page and people are going to give us their email on this page, and like this kind of flow user journey in a sense, they would get it, right? So they would instantly kind of buy from us and say, yeah, let's go and build this thing. But then I was always stuck with, okay, I've got to log into Google Analytics and Facebook and their CRM and build these spreadsheets and these dashboards to try and figure out how is this strategy performing? Because as any marketer knows, marketing isn't let's turn it on, everything works, and we're good to go, right? So we had to figure out, how do we optimize, how do we improve things, and I came up with this idea of, wouldn't it be really cool if I could just have a whiteboard technology like a Miro or a Lucidchart or a diagramming tool. I could map out the entire customer journey and I could just overlay data on top. I could just see exactly how are people flowing through it. My agency was doing really well at the time, so I bootstrapped and started developing this software, and that's when Funnelytics was born in around 2018.
That's a cool story. But just to the point, hey, make money online. You can get $10,000 working from the beach. I fell from for that, and I tried working from the beach like once.
Yeah.
My laptop almost exploded in my face, and I was like, no, never again.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
It's
a
like
trap.
this is actually not really that convenient. Who wants to work
Nope,
from the beach?
nope,
It's
doesn't
so
work.
true.
But great. So how, it's obviously a lot of founders talk about that idea, turning agency, turning service into a product, making money in their sleep, and like kind of, productizing what they've been doing for a long time. When did you really know, like, what was the first win that gave you an understanding with Funnelytics, that you're really onto something and that people are going to come and pay for it?
So when we launched Funnelytics, I did it very untraditionally. So most SaaS companies go down right away down the normal SaaS path, which is I'm either going to kind of do a discount and try to get some people in and do some product development with them and then slowly find product market fit this way. But I come from a marketing background. I know how to get customers and I know how to acquire them. This is what I've done for a very long time. Uh, and one of the things that I wasn't sure about Funnelytics was, do people even care about this? Like, I really built it for me to solve my own problem in my agency. So what happened was I had built kind of the mapping aspect of Funnelytics. So you could kind of draw a drag and drop, little pages, icons, Facebook icons, and kind of connect them together so you could visualize a flow. And the analytics aspect was not even, it was just being developed in the background, right? I went to a friend and I showed him kind of my vision for this and kind of the mapping tool. And it's called Funnelytics, so it's designed to be an analytics tool. But when he saw it, he was like, "Man, this mapping tool is really cool. Like, I kind of want to use your mapping tool." I was like, "Yeah, but I don't care about the mapping tool. The mapping tool is just a way to visualize the data, right? It's just a way for me to show the data and overlay it." And he's like, "Yeah, but maybe you should give away the mapping tool for free." And just get people into a community and like just start getting people into the world. And then when the analytics is ready, sell them the analytics. I was like, okay, well, that's actually not a bad idea. So that's what I did. I spent about between, it was December 7th, if I remember correctly, 2017 is when I turned on Facebook ads for this mapping tool. So free mapping tool, market funnel marketers, blah, blah, blah. Targeted kind of the Russell Brunson ClickFunnels audience, that segment. And people started signing up to the mapping tool. And on the thank you page, I invited them to a Facebook group. So I just said, hey, come to the Facebook group. We'll chat there and I'll give you some value and I'll tell you how I'm growing my agency and how I've been able to do all these, cool things. So in the Facebook group, basically every day I would post a video, I would write a piece of content, I would just give them value, right? And every once in a while, I would kind of drop a little demo or a little kind of update on this whole analytics aspect, right? The vision for what Funnelytics was. And at some point it was I remember because it was exactly 2 months to the day on February 7th was when I decided, okay, I'm going to open up a beta group for the analytics aspect. And I knew that it didn't work. It was barely in alpha. So like if people would have paid me in a normal SaaS, model, they would have churned within a month because it didn't really work. So I kind of said, okay, but I need to validate whether or not people care and whether or not I should be building for others or just continue to build for myself. By this point, there had been about 6,000 people that signed up to the mapping tool. So, we spent about 10,000 in ads, 6,000 people signed up to the mapping tool, about 3,000 or so signed up to the Facebook group. So I decided to open it up for about $700 US lifetime. I was like, well, there's no way somebody's paying me $700 a lifetime for something that barely works. So let me just see if people are going to pay upfront. I expected to maybe sell 100 over like a month, 2 months. I wasn't 100% sure. I saw there was a lot of activity. I ended up selling over 300 people in 48 hours. And we made $200,000 cash collected in 2 days. And that's when I was like, Hmm. Okay. This is pretty cool. I mean, seems like people want this, and seems like they're certainly excited by what we're doing. So that was kind of the tipping point of me saying, okay, I should probably start doubling down and focusing on this.
That's a pretty cool story. I remember I was talking to one of the founders here in the podcast, and he said, one thing that I wish I invested in earlier is the community. And he also
Hmm.
has this huge community on Facebook. And yeah, it seems like first you have to find your people, right? You have to find who you're selling to, and give them the right value prop. So I think, well, I know that the community is still going. I don't know if it's on Facebook. I know that it's on Slack. Is it running simultaneously? Is it another thing? Like, why are you still doing this?
So it's a good question. And in fact, we actually slowed down the community aspect. We restarted building it in a circle community. So there's a tool called circle.so, really, really great kind of Facebook groups alternative, right? A community alternative where you can have your courses and all that stuff. One of the things that we discovered over the years with Funnelytics was Funnelytics, although the mapping tool itself is very visual and simple, and we were marketing the mapping tool, it didn't really translate very much to people wanting the analytics tool because they're very different users, or they're in different stages of the marketing cycle, right? One is I'm planning out a new strategy, so I need kind of to visualize it. The other one is my strategy is already going, I'm spending money on ads, and I need to figure out what's working, what's not. I just want a way to visualize that data, right? So we kind of conflated the two as being, well, everyone who is going to do mapping will eventually do analytics, but we found that that wasn't actually the case. The challenge that we faced when marketing the mapping tool was that everyone who was coming in were really kind of getting started in marketing or starting their business. You know, the Russell Brunson ClickFunnels crowd, and again, I have nothing against them. Russell Brunson has been a great mentor of mine. However, they're all newbies. They're all getting started. They're all trying to figure out how to make money and launch their business. Meanwhile, the people who are really using Funnelytics from an analytics standpoint, they're like marketing nerds, right? It was funny. A friend of mine, we talk about ICPs a lot as SaaS companies. You know, who our ideal customers are, how do you get product market fit, and all that stuff. And a lot of times people talk about reducing churn by listening to people and kind of adopting the platform, but the true way to reduce churn is by building the product for the people who already use it and love it, not by building the product for people who are churning and trying to fix that, right? And it took us a really long time to understand that. I was sitting with, again, a friend of mine. He worked for the company. He was one of the early adopters, one of the people who bought one of those lifetime deals back in the day. And he said to me the other day, he's like, Mikael, I use Funnelytics every day, but you need to understand something. I'm a marketing nerd. Like, I love this stuff. Like, I love looking at the numbers. I love mapping the strategies. Like, I love analyzing the data. I love reporting back on that. And Mikael, you need to realize that you're also a marketing nerd. And most people who are signing up to Funnelytics are just like these marketing strategists. They like to talk about marketing, but they're not nerds like us. And if you keep building the product and you find 1,000 true nerds and they love the product, then then you can really think about product market fit, because now you know exactly who this product is for. And I think that, I don't really remember where I was kind of going with that train of thought, but that idea that in order for us to really kind of grow and find that solution to kind of take this to the next level, you really need to know who you're kind of building for. Okay, so going back to the Facebook group and the community, the challenge was that my communities were not filled with marketing nerds. They were filled with, the ClickFunnels people and the people who wanted to use this tool more for mapping purposes. So, or the people who were basically me at the very beginning of my agency, because that is what I was talking about. Hey, here's how I grew my agency. Here's how you could use this tool to close a new client. Here's how, etc. Right? So it attracted that group as opposed to the more kind of analytical people. So we rebuilt the community and circle to make it a little bit more focused, less Facebook driven. But yeah, that's kind of the evolution of that community.
Okay, that's great. The other point that I wanted to ask you about is that, data is great. Everyone in marketing, except me, loves data and like analyzing it and then looking at it. But there is such a saturation of data. I mean, the number of metrics available to you as a marketer is just incredible. And,
Yep.
you can pick and choose and you can put them together or, look at them apart. And like really it's ridiculous but the it's not a problem, getting data and like visualizing is not a problem anymore. The problem now is acting on it and like really knowing like how to act on the data that you're getting.
Yep.
So what would you maybe recommend, like, to founders, to marketers who don't know exactly like where to look and what actions to prioritize on the data they have? And maybe you have an example of like how you do it in Funnelytics.
Sure. So I actually slightly disagree. I think there is a big data problem, and that problem is that there's too much data. And that data is very siloed, right? So Facebook gives you data, Google Analytics gives you data, then there's your CRM data, and then there's your Stripe data, and none of it is really tied together. It's just data everywhere, right? So the biggest challenge that we face is not so much how do we act on it, although that is a big challenge. The bigger challenge is how do we kind of tie it together to tell a proper story, right? To understand how, like, somebody who clicks on Facebook where I see I spent, $5,000 and my cost per click over here was $2. Well, out of all the people who clicked on that ad, where did those people go? What did they do? Did they watch my videos? Did they go to my blogs? Did they go and to the opt-in page and put in their name and email? If they did put in their email, did they then go and open the emails? Did they click on it? What was the journey that these people took? And I kind of tell people that there's really only three things that we should really be thinking about. The first thing that we should be thinking about is the people that come to our site, right? The people that come to us. What we can't be thinking about is looking at data in a silo that isn't tied to a person. So page views, bounce rates, cost per click. This has nothing to do with an individual person. These are just numbers that we're throwing in the air. What I want to know is here's a person, and then I want to understand what are all of the actions that this person did, right? So I have a person who comes to my website, and I see that, okay, the way they came to my website was they clicked on this ad. Then the page they landed on was my homepage. Then the next thing that they did was they went to this other page. I want to see a timeline of this person, right? Because ultimately, all of the answers that I want is centered around that timeline. I want to know how many people got to the free trial stage, right? So I can, in essence, take all of these people and look at here's 1,000 people. How many of them have that free trial stage in their timeline, right? And I can isolate that group and say, okay, cool. Now show me how many of those people actually had a Facebook ad as a touch point prior to that. Okay, cool. Now I can kind of isolate that, right? So the challenge becomes how do we take all of this data and attach it to a person's profile in a sense? And then how do we ask the right questions based on these people's profiles to get the answer to, what we're trying to optimize for? So what makes Funnelytics very cool and unique is at the foundational level, when somebody comes to your website, we create a profile for them. Google Analytics didn't do this with their original Google Analytics. They just looked at, okay, you had X amount of page views. And on this other page, you had X amount of page views. And it wasn't tied to an individual person. in Google Analytics 4, since they've released it, now they've made their tracking user centric. So you can kind of see people's profile, but it's terrible, terrible user experience. So what makes Funnelytics kind of unique is first that we need to track that individual person. Then what we need to be able to do is, like I said, ask the right questions based on these various segments of people. So with Funnelytics, what makes it very cool and simple is everything I put on a canvas and I connect it together, all I'm really doing is saying, hey, I want to know how many people visited this page. And then eventually, by just dragging a line and connecting to another step, went and did this thing, right? So I can ask questions like, how many people started my free trial and then eventually went and became a customer? Or how many people went from my Facebook ad, then went to this page and eventually became, a deal one in my pipeline, for example. So fundamentally, we need to look at the people, we need to look at the actions that they take in their timeline, and then the paths that they took in order to get to the conversion point that we care about. That's how I like to think about it. That's kind of what Funnelytics. I told you I'm a marketing nerd, as you can tell from all
Yes,
this.
I can see
So,
that.
but that's how we think about it at Funnelytics, and that's what makes Funnelytics very kind of cool and visual and easy. Is because it's just drag and drop, right? In that sense.
All right. Well, then I'm gonna ask for a bit more marketing nerd wisdom. So you're working with a ton of marketers and teams. Do you see any shifts in SaaS marketing strategies adjusting to this like slower market reality and shift to like, sustainable growth?
Yeah, a lot. I think, 2020, 2021, um, even 2019, pre-COVID, like 2018, there was so much money being thrown into software companies. And marketing tech has always kind of had a bad rap, and mostly because there was a boom in marketing tech and kind of the early 2010s. And of course, I think it's going to be similar with AI, tech, where there's just so many building AI technology that eventually what will happen is there's going to be a couple that rise to the top, a few that rise to the top. Most are just going to end up being another version of something else, right? And marketing tech kind of has that problem where you're so tied to other platforms a lot of times. You're so tied to integrations, and if they make a slight tweak, like a lot of people built their business off of the Facebook ecosystem, for example, and Facebook's like, yeah, we're going to change something. It's like, boom, your business is gone overnight. And I think that that's hurt a lot of the VCs, at least in the marketing tech space. But what's happened in general is, okay, interest rates have gone up, money is not as abundant anymore, and people are looking way more at what we call kind of the rule of 40, as opposed to, hey, let's gamble and bet big. So the rule of 40 basically states that your business should be growing at about 40% in a proportion to profit and growth. So the sum of your profit, the percentage of profit versus your percentage of growth, should be about 40%. So let's say you're growing at 10% year over year, you should be making about 30% profit. If you're at 5% profit, you should be growing at 35%, right? And that's kind of the thinking that a lot of the businesses and SaaS companies are starting to adopt, which is, how do we not have negative profit? How do we grow profitably? A lot of people are moving towards a bootstrap model more so than a VC model because of this. More and more resources and training and mentors are coming out helping businesses figure out how to kind of bootstrap. So yeah, there's this big shift I'm seeing happening. We have gone through the shift ourselves. We raised VC money. We went through VC money. We kind of burned through and grew, but didn't necessarily hit the metrics we needed to hit to raise the next round. So we had to retransition to a bootstrap mindset and operate from a place of profitability, which, that's not what VCs want to see at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And I mean, rule of 40 is something that we've been talking for a couple of years at saas group, but I had a really interesting conversation with the founder here as well, and we were talking about this, shift to sustainability and how some companies, even that raised VC money at some point, now have to shift back and maybe go with a bootstrap route. And he actually said he's never heard of a company that's done that, or at least that's done it successfully. Maybe you can tell that story.
Yeah, I mean, successful is relative. I guess it depends on what your definition of successful is and whether you're talking about exit or whether you're talking about, having bought out the VCs or something like that. So we still have VCs on our cap table, but it's also a conversation as to what is the VC looking for and where are you at in the business, right? And is the business still growing? Is it still making money? Are we kind of seeing the right direction? And I happen to have very good investors who ultimately aren't, Canadian investors are not the same as American investors. They're a little bit more conservative. They don't gamble as much, so they would prefer to see profits and steady growth than death. There's a lot of VCs in the states where it's $1 billion or bust, right? They'll give you the money, but there's no in between. You can't just grow profitably and sustainably. They need you to grow at hyper growth at all costs, and they'd rather see your company die. I happen to have VCs who don't think that way. So part of the transition was, okay, where are we right now? Realistically, let's make a real assessment as to, is this the right time to raise more money? If so, can we get the valuation that we want on this round? And if not, how do we keep building the company in a way that shows a nice story when it's time to raise more money or when it's time to exit? Or again, if we keep growing profitably and making money, then there's other options as well, right? So I wouldn't say I've done it successfully. I would say that I've had really open, transparent conversations with my investors to figure out, what is the best course of action for the company, really.
And do you have anything to share on like the specific things that you had to adjust to, or that you had to, cut costs on, like, I don't know, resizing your team, hopefully not, or like, I don't know, saying no to buying merch, whatever.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, we had to cut significantly. It was really, really tough. It was painful for by the end of 2020, like beginning of 2023. 2023 was probably one of the hardest years I've faced with Funnelytics, because our team was big, well, bigger. We were growing, but not growing fast enough to kind of raise the next round. And again, part of that was figuring out that product market fit and understanding who we're going after. So 2022, we were growing pretty steadily, but we were burning money because we were VC backed. So by the end of kind of 2022, I had to make a really tough call. Like, do we keep going down this path and try to raise more money? It probably won't work because we pivoted the business. We didn't pivot the business model, but we certainly pivoted who we were going after. So our pricing changed. We were getting our 1.0 customers, who were kind of these smaller businesses. They were there, but churn was pretty high, and we were working on growing the second segment for Funnelytics 2.0, which are these bigger businesses, these kind of more performance driven marketers, these more nerdy marketers, I guess. But it wasn't growing fast enough. So I had to cut a big part of my team. I had to make a lot of decisions in terms of, how do we get to a profitable model, and how quickly can we get to that profitable model? So it was really tough. I'll be honest. Those were days where I was very much laying in bed awake at night for a long time, trying to figure out, how the hell am I going to get out of this? What am I going to do to turn this around? Not easy, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And, just referring to it being not easy, I mentioned at the beginning, when I was listening to your other podcasts, there was this, kind of theme in every one of them, that, if you're thinking about building a business, you should really think twice and like realize that it's a tough call, and it's going to be not just rainbows and butterflies and beach in your laptop. And you're a solo founder, so it must be even harder to do it alone. So yeah, how do you focus in times like that? How do you prioritize, the clear vision and like what to do in this situation?
Yeah, it's a good question. How do I do it? I mean, I think the main thing is I've always had a very strong belief in my product and what we were building. And that has never gone away, right? So when you fundamentally believe in what you're building and the product that you're building, and you continue to stay aligned with that, the road is not necessarily going to be the one you planned. It may kind of take you this way and this way, but as long as your eye is always on where we're headed, eventually you'll correct course and you'll continue to go back towards that destination. And I think that was the fundamental principle. Is I believed in it. We had enough, proof with our segment, enough traffic, enough things to kind of show that, what, we can we can kind of do this and go through it. But a lot of it is also getting out of your own head, right? So meditating is extremely important. Just learning to clear your mind and learning to basically figure out, how do I not think, right? Because you can overthink, and it's very easy to overthink, right? It's very easy to act in that kind of intellectual mindset where everything must be analyzed, every decision. But there's a lot of times where you also have to act in more of that intuitive zone, where you're thinking a lot more from intuition, and is this the right move? Does it feel like the right move? Even if you don't have it all laid out or clear. And a big part of me moving through that was realizing that this is still the right vision. It's still the right move. Maybe how I approached it from an intellectual standpoint, from a growing my team maybe too quickly, doing these things, that these experiments that didn't work, to etc. Those were just kind of blips in the journey, in a sense, right? So I think if you don't have that belief and that vision, and you don't take the action, like I always kind of say to people, and I learned this from my father, from my dad. He basically has always told me, like, look, you can do anything you want in life, and basically there's really only one secret to success. And that secret is three things. You need to have a super clear vision of what you want, like crystal clear. You need to know exactly what you want, and you need to be able to visualize it. Number two is you need to take consistent action towards it, just every day, consistent action towards it. And number three, which is probably the most important, you have to have 110% belief or faith that that vision can be reality, right? And if you have any doubt that that vision can be reality, then you're going to self-sabotage. Your conscious mind is going to, or your subconscious mind is going to, make you look other ways and find other opportunities, because you don't fully believe that that vision can be a reality. It happens that even though it's challenging, for me, I have 100% belief in our vision at Funnelytics. I'm very clear as to what that vision is. So we just kept taking action every day, even though some of those actions may have not necessarily been the right moves. But that's how I go about it.
That's really cool. I really enjoyed listening to you. I was like, okay, what, like, I started thinking about my own, kind of journey, and like, what is my vision? I need to start journaling up right after this. but, but yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I mean, just a couple more questions. The usuals here. What so far have been your biggest win and your biggest failure? Maybe not a failure, a learning.
My biggest win, I mean, my biggest win to me is always going to be The first customer that bought Funnelytics, I remember actually, I know exactly who he is. I know his name. And I remember he sent me a Facebook message saying, "Hey, I found the back door," because I had hinted that we're opening up this beta group. And basically, he found it without me posting the link, and the payment came in. And he sent me a message saying, "Hey, I found it. You didn't really make it that hard to figure out what it was going to be." So I decided to sign up. And I remember that was a very, very validating piece of the puzzle. Now, is it my biggest win? I don't know. But it is certainly something that stands out to me because it kind of created, it started this journey, right? It really kind of validated that, hey, you know what, this is something that could be something pretty big. But we've done a lot of other cool things throughout the years. My biggest learning is definitely when I've had to kind of cut the team and restructure and go from, this burn growth VC mindset to switching back. Because, I went from bootstrapped mindset to raising a whole bunch of money and now being in a VC mindset. And it took me a good 6 to 12 months before I even started spending any of that money, because I was so, in the back of my head, I was like, is this real? Like, is there really $3 million in the bank account right here? I've been so used to just bootstrapping, right? So, and then as I started burning that money and we went into, the VCs encouraged me to kind of keep, start spending it and start using it, etc., to kind of then go back to this mindset of no, 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 now I have to really watch how much there is in the bank account. I have to watch my profits. I have to, go back to that. So that learning and that transition, I wouldn't say a failure because it wasn't really a failure, but having to downsize the team, restructure, rethink the business, I learned a lot for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I have no doubt. So the last question is about a hack. It can be something that, is super strange, but you keep going back to it, it keeps working. You're like, okay, that's a good hack. Or, just some conventional wisdom that, that's why we all read business books, right? We just like to be reminded of.
So I think one of the biggest hacks to start any SaaS company, to grow any SaaS company, is we're really transitioning towards this founder led sales. And we always have founder led sales, but more so founder led authority and founder led content. And I think a lot of businesses still think that a software is the business and that the software is what people care about. They don't. The software is just a solution to a problem. The reason they're going to pick your solution versus another solution isn't because of your features, it's because of what your company represents. And that is strictly from the founder's approach, right? It's the founder who drives what does this company truly represent. I think more founders need to put out content, need to do these types of podcasts, need to get in front of their audience and really talk about the problem and the solution from a place of passion, because that is what's going to drive those first 1,000 loyal customers that make your product kind of stickier and improve retention. So to me, that is one of the biggest hacks. That's how we kind of grew Funnelytics, the community side, just being willing to be present, share knowledge, and be kind of that face of your business. Nike isn't better than Adidas because of the logo and the shoes and the clothing. It's better because it sponsors better athletes, and those athletes are the world class athletes. And who does the kid want to be? Well, they want to be Michael Jordan. That's who they want to be. They don't care about the Nikes. They care about the fact that Michael Jordan is wearing the Nikes. So that's why they want to buy Nikes, right? And I think we need to continue that mindset. So that's one of my biggest hacks.
That's a great one. It's actually something that I noticed when I started researching about you and Funnelytics, is that there's like a ton of videos, a ton of like different shorts all over LinkedIn and on YouTube, and you've done quite a few of the podcasts, and I was like, okay, well, first of all, it's going to make my life a lot easier to like learn about you, and second, it gives so many different perspectives and what you're building, how you're doing it, who you're doing it with. So it really gives a more cohesive like view on what Funnelytics is and who you are.
Well, I appreciate that.
Sure. But yeah, it's been great talking to you. I mean, thanks for the nerdiness. Like we needed that. Everyone really wants to like understand how to, how to grow in the conditions that we all have right now. But also, all the personal stories. It really resonates when founders share those because, hey, you're right. It's not an easy path. So
No,
thanks for
it
being
it
here.
is my pleasure. My pleasure. It was great to be here, and thank you for having me.
Sure, anytime. And take care.